Before we get into the episode, I am thrilled to announce that the EntreMD Business School is open for enrollment. The EntreMD Business School is the only school of its kind for physicians who want to build 6, 7, and multiple 7-figure businesses. Over the last 2 years, we have had hundreds of doctors go through the school with unbelievable results. Some of them run brands, some of them run private practices, some of them are coaches, some have other kinds of service-based businesses or product-based businesses. And we've had people come in and cross the 6-figure milestone, cross the 7-figure milestone, cross the multiple 7-figure milestone. You will be in a place where you'll get the coaching, the community, the accountability that you need to thrive as an entrepreneur, especially in the times that we're in. So maybe you've been following me for a while. Maybe you've been getting so much out of the EntreMD podcast and you've been wondering, how can I work with Dr. Una and the community more? Well, this is your chance. Come join us in the EntreMD Business School. It is application only. So go to entremd.com/business to turn in your application. I cannot tell you how many doctors have made statements like this. I recovered my investment in the first week. I recovered my investment in my bank account in the first 90 days. This is the best investment I've made in myself ever. I want you to have that kind of story, not just a story of building a great business that serves a lot and earns a lot, but having a business that gives you the freedom to live life on your terms. So don't wait any longer. entremd.com/business. And now for the episode. Hi, docs. Welcome to the EntreMD podcast, where it's all about helping amazing physicians just like you embrace entrepreneurship so you can have the freedom to live life and practice medicine on your terms. I'm your host, Dr. Una. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the EntreMD podcast. And today we are going to be talking to one of the rockstar EntreMD Business School students, Dr. Cheruba Prabakar. And she is like off the chain amazing. She's been on the podcast before. She's spoken at our EntreMD Live and things like that. And her story just keeps getting better and better. So she's back. And today is going to be such a gift because I'm always in awe of the generosity of the doctors in the school, because they would come to share their stories and share principles and lessons they've learned and all of that. And reading books is really fantastic. Listening to principles is really wonderful, but hearing it all woven into a story is just magical because it brings it to life. So yeah, Dr. Cheruba, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here and share my story.
And I'm so excited you're here. And you know what? We're actually doing this at 12 noon Eastern on a Tuesday, right? And so first of all, you being in private practice and being able to do this says something, right? The whole concept of living life and practicing medicine on your terms. So I know you've been on the show before, but I'm going to give you a moment to introduce yourself so the listener knows exactly who they're listening to. And then I have a million questions for you.
All right, let's get started. So I'm Dr. Prabhakar. I am a board certified OBGYN and a fellowship trained minimally invasive surgeon. I trained in the East Coast and then moved up here to the West Coast 8 years ago. And when I moved here, it was all corporate medicine, which is very different from the East Coast. So that's the system that I was in for several years. And after about 7 years, I started to get an itch and I really want to start my own practice, but really thought that it was not possible, and the climate that we're in and the way physicians' practices are going and all of that. But anyway, long story short, I did decide to do it. And I just celebrated my first year anniversary of opening my direct specialty care practice, where I practice gynecology and surgery and menopause care. And I am really living my best life. That's really the summary of the last year.
Man, I still remember last year you had come in for the EntreMD Business School Vision Retreat, and you're like, I opened my practice like I just launched it, and here we are a whole year later. And to hear you in a climate where, I don't know if you know the data, but we're looking at 30% of private practices are owned by physicians. The rest are owned by hospitals or, private equity. And the number of practices that are disappearing, I mean, this is happening on a daily basis. You're in the Facebook groups where it sounds like, okay, I decided to close my doors. And for you to not only start, but at the end of year one, your reflection, like the summary of your reflection is, I'm living my dream life. That is just magical. Like, I am so happy, beyond excited for you. So we're gonna have a lot of stuff to talk about here. So when you look back on the last year, what are some of the biggest wins that you've experienced? Like when you sit in the magic of what's happened over the last year?
Yes. I think the first and foremost is just the fact that I decided to bet on my, and I shared this with you last year. There were so many people who told me it was not going to work. Are you crazy? The Bay Area is so tough. You have 3 kids. Why do you want to do all this? Just coast along in your job and all of these things. And that was the predominant force with which I encountered. But I still decided to do it. And I am so glad I did. And now when I look back, I'm like, wow, I really would not have it any other way. I practice medicine now in a way that is sustainable for me, that a way in which I want to, a way in which my patients are being served, and a way in which I am being served and my family is being served, which is a narrative that is new, because that's not what people really cared about all these years. You were just a cog in the wheel. You went and did your thing. Maybe somebody celebrated your birthday in the office, but other than that, nobody really cared about your family. And as you said, we're recording this in the middle of a work day. I saw my kids this morning, got to say goodbye to them as they went off to school. There's just all of those little tangible and intangible wins. And so that, I think, is just my biggest win, that I decided to take the plunge. I trusted myself and, of course, leaned on the EntreMD community and just went for it.
And I'm so glad you did, right? Because the thing about not going for it, not chasing down something that's truly a dream, is you'll never know what could have been. Like, if you didn't do this, you wouldn't know this version of life, right? You'd just been like, yeah, I'm keeping my job and doing the same thing. But there's somebody who's listening to this who is at that point where they're like, there are a lot of what ifs, right? Like, for instance, you're direct specialty care. So that means you're cash. For GYN in the Bay Area, that's like totally, like triple unheard of, right? And they're thinking, like, does that work? Do you actually generate revenue? Do people pay for that? And all of that. What would you, because you were at that point, right? At some point. So I want us to stop like right here this early in it. What would you tell that person?
Yeah, those were exactly the thoughts running through my head last year when I started. But I just took a moment to think about the incredible skills that I have, right? Like, I went to residency, I went to fellowship, and those are skills that I've learned and honed over the years. And so, okay, I just went immediately to the worst case scenario. What if it didn't work? What if nobody paid? What if I go through a year and I'm in debt and nothing worked? You know what? I can just pick up some calls in the ER, some shifts here and there, and still bring in the money without putting all that stress on myself. And that was my plan from day one. I did take a little extra call here and there to supplement my income. And honestly, I didn't know if patients would come. And very few patients actually followed me from my previous job. But I generated a whole new following this year through all of the networking and the marketing and everything that I did. And so as I sit back and look at this year, this was a proof of concept for me. Hey, you know what? People are coming. People are willing to pay for my expertise. And if I have a slow month, or if I feel like I'm not going to pay my bills, which actually has not happened at all this year, by the way, but if it did, no problem. I'll just up a couple shifts and I can make it work. So I think sometimes we just need to give ourselves a little more credit than we give ourselves. Like, we really do have some great skills, regardless of which specialty you are in. And every day I get text messages from locums agencies. Please, can you come here and we'll pay you $20,000? Can you come and take these shifts? And so we know there's a huge physician shortage. So regardless of who's listening and which specialty you are, you will be able to make up some income. So yes, you won't know the answers all the time, and you won't know all the answers at any given time. And that is uncomfortable. We are physicians. We want to know, we have people's lives in our hands. We want to know the plan. And sometimes you just have to be okay with not having it all laid out. And that's okay. And so when I look back at this year, I think that's the biggest message that I would say. You don't have to have it all figured out. Just start, and it will all pan out.
I wish you guys could see me. I'm just giggling and laughing. This is making me so happy because you hit a number of things, and these are the things that stop people, right? The thought that I have to have it all figured out. Like when you think algorithms in medicine, maybe, but when you come to the business world, that's just not the way it works. And actually, we talk about being certain in uncertainty. Like it's uncertain, but you're like, this is my decision and I'm going to follow up with it. And really, that's the only way this works. And the other thing you talked about is something I know, I'm glad you brought it up because it's something a lot of times I find doctors, when they embrace entrepreneurship, they're ashamed of, right? You're thinking, if this doesn't work, I'll just take locum shifts, which means I have the power, I have the capacity, I have the skill that enables me to self-fund my business. I'm not saying I want to go take this big loan. I could do locums and pay, like I got this, right?
Yes.
And that's a very powerful thought because sometimes we just ignore that skill and we're just like, oh, it's not working. And we put ourselves under unnecessary pressure. But for you, what you did is you built this plan B. You didn't even necessarily need to go there in that way because you were able to, the business was able to take care of itself, but it's a plan B. Like if I'm going to fall, I have something to fall back on. And that's it's a powerful thing. We trained for over a decade to get the capacity to do that, but we have the capacity to fund our own businesses, like worst case scenario. So thank you for sharing that. That's really powerful. Now you went on to talk about things that people don't want to talk about. Okay. You talked about networking, you talked about marketing, you talked about all these things. So what are some of the things that you find, because you built a really nice size practice, right? Got a lot of patients and all of that. What are some of the things that were responsible for building your patient base that quickly?
Yes. So I did a lot of networking. I think that's the number one thing. And when we are in an employed position, we're almost not encouraged to do that, right? Like often in these big corporate structures, you can't have people come in and talk to you. You can't have reps come in, and you can't go and give a talk here and there. It's almost discouraged. And of course, this depends where you are. But in private practice and in solo practice, when you start a business, it's all about networking. And so that's something I actually naturally enjoy. So this is great for me. I got to go and meet all these people, learn all these things, go give talks, invite other people to my practice for lunch. So it was a blast. But honestly, it's exhausting. If you think about all the meetings and the talks and the people that you're meeting, is exhausting, but it is completely and entirely necessary to build this type of practice. And another lesson was on patience. I will go and do 10 talks, and then the next week I'm like, okay, where are all the patients and where are all the referrals? And it doesn't work that way. Like a year into my practice, I'm getting patients from events that I did 10 months ago.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt you and have you say that again, because this is important. Yeah, say that again.
Yes. So I am getting patients now in my practice from events that I did 10 months ago. And I ask every patient who comes in, how did you find me? And I remember doing this 2-hour event in October of last year when I first started the practice. It was a cold morning at 6:30. I'm setting up this tent. I don't have a team. No one's there to help me. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Why did I even sign up? But, I did all the things. I showed up, I talked to people. And from that event that I did last October, I had a patient who signed up, who came in 2 months ago. And she said, I always had your card from that event and I just never got around to it. And so it's a good lesson in that, you sow the seeds. You don't know when you're going to reap that harvest. It may not be right away, which we're impatient for, especially private practice. You're like, okay, I need the patients, but it does take time, and you have to be just very disciplined about doing those things that are going to bring the results, and it will come.
Love it. Okay.
Yeah.
So the networking, the marketing, the patience, right? The patience in the entrepreneurial world, we call it this snowball, right? But you have to keep doing the thing and you have to keep waiting on it. And this is really so good. Now, before we hit record, you talked about an incident at the Business Makeover Mastermind. Not an incident. That sounds bad. Something that needs to be reported to administration, not an incident, but something that happened when you were at the Business Makeover Mastermind, which is the April event we do for the EntreMD Business School. So I have you talk about that because I think it really shows the power of, again, betting on yourself, deciding to go for something, like all of those kind of things. And I really love to see people do that, because once you start doing that, you do create a magical life that you're like, how did I get here? Yeah. So
yes. So at that event in Atlanta, we did where you did a talk about the $1 million framework and how can a business actually make $1 million. And even though I'd already been in the business school for 2 years, almost at that point, a year and a half, I was like, that doesn't apply to me. Like, how am I going to make $1 million? I just started this practice. That was just like beyond anything I could comprehend at that time. And so we went through the entire exercise. And at the end, you said, okay, everybody write down your goal for this upcoming year. How much revenue do you want to make? And then let's figure out how we're going to get there. The EBS puzzle, as we say, how could you get there? And so I was thinking, okay, what number should I write? Okay, I'm not writing $1 million. Should I write like $500,000? Oh, that seems like crazy. But I wanted to stretch myself a little bit. And so I put down a few numbers, and there was like, I think 150, 250. And then I wrote another bigger number. And then I turned to the person next to me and I said, this number seems like I could definitely hit it, but this number seems a little crazy. Like, I think I should put that. And she was like, yeah, of course, just go for it. And level. But I was crunching my numbers, and we have 2 months to go in 2023, and I'm almost there. And so to me, this is literally blowing my mind. I did put that number on my vision board, okay, in January. I wrote that in my affirmations that I say to myself every day. And I'm working extremely hard towards getting there. But I almost didn't really believe that number was for me. You know what I mean? But now that 2023 is almost to an end, I'm like, wow, I have a very, very realistic chance of hitting it. And this is just giving me the boldness to like double that number for next year, which is just crazy. But I actually have the thought that, oh, I could probably do it, which is amazing. Just such a growth mindset.
yeah. And the fun part of it, right? Like in the first instance, we could say the 7-figure framework, this is how we do it, all of those kind of things. They're like, that's crazy, whatever. But after you taste a little bit, you're like, I didn't quite put 7 figures there, but I am on track to hit that number. Then it makes you go, the natural response to that is, if I could do that, if that could happen, what else is possible for me? And not just in business, it's in life, because you're like, wait a minute. And it becomes something that addiction is probably a negative word, but it's something that inspires you to become this person who says, I'm not fixed. I'm not just the way I am. I am more like Play-Doh. Like I can change. I can morph. I can be. So when you see something you admire in somebody, you're like, I can become that. Because you're like, it's a process. I can.
Totally. And in the beginning, I said I'm living my best life. And this last year, and what I meant is not just in my business, but all these principles that I've learned in running this business. I mean, I didn't know the first thing about business. Okay. But, the profit and loss statements and hiring and firing and recruiting and marketing, all these things that I've learned and the discipline that I've learned, I've actually been able to apply in all areas of my life, my kids, my home, my marriage, self-care, all of these things. And so it's been a ripple effect for me. And so my kids know that I'm always not now. I'm actually anything that I learn, I'm actually trying to bring it to them in a little bite-sized piece and things that I would have never thought about. And so it's just been magical all around.
And I want to applaud you for doing that. We're going to have to end up with EBS Junior or EBS Legacy or something, because what you're doing is giving them money is powerful, right? Leaving them a financial inheritance is powerful. And we want to be able to do that for our kids. But I'm a firm believer that the bigger inheritance is the thing that created the money. Right.
Yes.
And so when you transfer the way of thinking, when you transfer the principles, when you transfer those bigger pictures of what is possible. So for you, you're like 7 figures. How is that even possible? For your kids, if you guys talk numbers, they're like, that's how we roll in our family. Like now they have another number, bigger number that's impossible, not 7 figures, because you already shattered that for them. And that's the real gift, right? That's the gift that keeps giving. That's what will make them take the inheritance, the financial inheritance you leave them, and then multiply because they know what to do. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes.
And that's so powerful. So powerful. I want to read something here because I was looking at the debrief you did for the third quarter of the year. And you made a statement here as when you talked about the lessons you learned, and you said, take messy and massive action. Most people around you and your competitors are not doing that. And so I found that so intriguing because action, if inaction is one of the things that costs us our goals, like really, that's the way that works. And as doctors, a lot of times we are perfectionists, right? We don't want to do messy action. That's not the thing. So I want to talk a little bit about that. And also this concept that this is what makes the difference because other people are not doing this. They're not.
Yes. So one of the things that I've realized this last year is many people, when I talk to people about a practice, about doing what I'm doing, a lot of people will say, oh, I also wanted to do that, but oh, look at you. That's so awesome. And then I'll talk about something else and they'll say, oh man, I've also always wanted to do that. And then I started thinking, wow, everyone's always saying they wanted to do things, but the difference is I'm just doing it. Like, it's not that I have any extra training than them. In fact, these people are saying these things. A lot of them are older and they've had more experience in running practices. And I'll give you a practical example with the direct specialty care. As I've networked through the Bay Area, I realized that different parts of the Bay Area have stronger networks of these concierge doctors, but the area that I'm in, the East Bay, doesn't. And so somebody in San Francisco was telling me, oh, it would be nice if you guys had something like that so that you can really come together and form a group. And I was thinking about that. And every concierge doctor that I spoke to in the East Bay said the same thing. I was like, well, why is no one starting it? So last week, I just fired off an email to the 10 concierge doctors I know in the area. And I said, hey, we're starting the Bay Area Concierge Coalition. Our first Zoom meeting is November 13th. Please, here's the link to register.
I love it. And just like that.
And just like that, the Bay Area Concierge Coalition is born. And it's just a simple thing. I mean, everybody wants it. People want that community. People want that network of concierge doctors. People want to learn from each other. But it's a simple, now the first is a Zoom meeting. Will we meet in person? What is this going to become? I have no idea. But all I know is I'm putting the seed for something to happen that we've all been talking about. So that's just a perfect example of just taking action. And now this will let me network with more concierge doctors. And it's who knows what that'll lead to, right? I have no idea. But so yeah. So just taking action, even though it's imperfect, even though it's messy, if it's strategic and if it's something that you've always wanted to do, just doing it. And as we always talk about in EBS, not doing things that don't really matter, right? We're always busy doing a lot of things, especially as a business owner. There's a lot of things every morning when you wake up. You're like, oh my goodness, all these emails, this thing, that thing, and then I got to see patients, and then I got to go to the OR. There's a lot to do, but really thinking through that filter and saying, okay, what's strategic? And let me just do it. I may not know how it's all going to work out and pan out and all of that, but let me take the first step. And often this is how, when I operate, sometimes I look at a complex case, I'll put a camera in and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is a mess. How am I actually going to get the uterus out? I don't know yet. I'll figure that out in the next 2 hours. But all I know is I'm going to take this one ligament right now. And then I'm going to dissect around and find things. And then I keep moving. And then 2.5 hours later, the hysterectomy is done, right? It's very much like that in business. We may not know the end goal and how we're going to get there, but we just need to get going.
Okay. So, wow. You know what? Thank you for sharing all of this. This is so fun and this is so good because you really paint a picture of embracing imperfection, which is so important if you're going to make strides as an entrepreneur and if you're going to enjoy your journey as an entrepreneur. Now, it's not as though you're launching out without having any clue whatsoever, right? Like in the surgery, you have a general idea, but you're like, it's a little more complex, but I'm going to start with what I know and then I'm going to work it out. And that's just powerful because with that attitude, there's no end. You can just keep going. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to be perfect. You just get the thing done. And as you can see, after doing this, you've produced this massive result in just your first year when you were told this is not how this works. Like you're not going to survive this doing this with your specialty or in the Bay Area, but here you are, right? And there's another question I want to ask you because I find a lot of entrepreneurs get very frustrated when they don't see results in 30 days, right? Like I put out one social media post. I don't understand why the whole world is not in my business. I did one ask looking for a new team member. I don't understand why I don't have 72 applications. But in your journey, you started out with, I want more. And you actually spent your first year or even year and a half building your personal brand. And then after that, you said, okay, I want to get into private practice. How did you not get so discouraged that you stopped along the way? Because you could have said, I'm investing in myself. I'm investing in Entrepreneurial Business School and I'm building a brand. What is this? There are people who just can't handle that. How do you, because what that means is that you're putting yourself in a position where year by year, you're getting better, you're evolving, you're in for the long game, you're playing the infinite game. You know what I mean? That's the feel I get from the way you approach this. And that is the way champions behave, right? So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yes. So one thing I will say first is I did not take a loan for this business. Okay. I know that trips up a lot of people. Like people have even said to me, oh, well, easy for you to do all this because your husband makes a good salary or whatever. But the truth is it doesn't matter. Like I could have still had the same outcome. So you don't need to take a massive loan. You don't need to go into debt. You don't need to be personally rich or whatever to first do this. And that's because of the things we talked about before. I always had those skills in my pocket. And I knew that I could self-fund this business. So that, believe it or not, is a thought that I kept going back to. And there were times like I started the business in October, everything was exciting. Oh, I was making some money, woohoo. And then like January, February, there were times when I came into the office and I was like, oh, I have no patience today. Oh, I have no patience tomorrow. How am I going to actually get through this week? And I was like, this is not working. Oh no, everybody was right. Yes, I did have a couple of those moments. But then I said to myself, okay, so if I don't get any patients this week, let me pick up that locums in the ER, and okay, I'll make up some money, no big deal, and let me keep on doing the things that I am doing. And then I started to acquire new strategies. So networking was my number one. And then when I was really low, the January, February period, I picked up Google Ads. And I was like, okay, let me figure out how this works. Completely out of my comfort zone. I'm not a tech person. I don't know anything about Google Ads, but okay, well, this is a new way in which people find doctors. So let me figure out how that works and let me sit down and master that and get that into my marketing stew, so to speak. And so it helped me I had to just systematically think, what else can I add? What else am I missing? But also saying to myself, you are doing a great job. You are doing all of the things. Now, when I didn't have a patient, it's not like I didn't go to work and just was watching Netflix. I still showed up at 9 a.m. every single day, whether I had a patient or not, and then started working on all of the things that would lead me to get patients. And in the back of my mind, I always went back to that thought, okay, if I have a bad month, if I'm kind of low, let me pick up a couple of shifts. I always could go back to that. And that gave me the confidence to keep going. And now into year one, I don't have time to take locums. I want to pour everything into my business because this is the highest yield for me. But always keeping that in your back pocket and kind of not having this all or none mentality, which I think for physicians, it's hard. It was hard for me. Okay, either this is going to work. I'm putting everything into this because if it doesn't work, I'm going to be embarrassed and whatever. But it doesn't have to be all or none. It can be I start out 3 days in my practice and 2 days taking locums, for example. You can mix and match, and that's the beautiful thing about being an entrepreneur. No one is telling you what to do, and you know what? That takes a while to wrap your head around. You're like, what do you mean I can give that talk and do the locum and work in my practice? Yes, you can do whatever you want because you are your own boss. And so that actually really is what kept me going and still keeps me going. And I know that I have the tools of the trade to make it work. And I think all physicians, we should have the confidence to do that because we've all trained in whatever specialty we are. We've all put in the years. We're so educated and people want our expertise. And so it's that kind of shifting that mindset and realizing, yes, it's not all or none. I'm extremely talented and I can figure this out.
Oh man, I should have warned you guys that we were going to have 17 master classes in this one podcast episode, but this is so good. So good. This is a gift to anybody listening really in any phase because this is year one for you. I'm really good at projecting all the way, but I think year 5, you're going to be so blown away. And I'll just be going like, yeah, I know famous people. I don't know what to tell you. This is really amazing. Now, tell people where they can find you. I want them to follow you on social media because you crush it on social media. And then for people in the Bay Area, they would love to refer to you and stuff like that. So let them know where they can find you.
Yes, thank you. So I am located in Lafayette, California, just about 25 minutes outside San Francisco. I practice a full scope gynecology, surgery, as well as sexual medicine and menopause care. My website is GYN.com. And then on social media, I'm on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram as The Fibroid Doc. TheFibroidDoc. You can find a lot of information on various GYN topics, practice stuff, and I also do fibroid coaching for those who want a little extra support on fibroids and gynecologic health.
There you go. And you know how we are. Okay. She's going to come here and be vulnerable and tell us all the things that we're also going to support her on her journey. So make sure you follow her on social media. If you're in the Bay Area, people who are looking for a doc just like her, or if you're looking for a doc just like her, go find her. Okay. Now, what would you say? There's somebody who's thinking about all of this. Maybe they're thinking about the EntreMD Business School as well. And the way it is when you try to make a decision, this never goes away, right? Every time you want to make a new decision, it's like, well, I don't know if that will work for me. I don't know if I can afford it. Maybe it's for special people like Dr. Cheruba and things like that. What would you say to that person who's on the cuff and I don't know if this school is right for me?
I would say, just do it. Do not think twice. And I will tell you why. When I started in EBS in 2021, I was an employed physician. I still did not think private practice, I could pull it off. I didn't have a plan. If you ask me, what are your top 3 goals of joining EBS? I couldn't really tell you. I just knew that there was more. I knew there was more. I knew that I needed a community of people to help me navigate and help me figure out what that more was. And so that's really where EBS did its thing for me. And that, as you said, the first whole year, I really still didn't know that I was going to start a practice. I was like, okay, what else could I think about? How else can I still practice my craft while being a little more autonomous? And then seeing those examples of other people also struggling with the same questions and then actually triumphing and figuring it out gave me the confidence that, oh, I too can do it. In fact, my first vision retreat, we had to dream and do all of those things. And I still didn't write down own a private practice in my journal because I was like, I can't even think about that. And a year later, I was there having opened doors to my private practice. So it's a place that will help you crystallize those thoughts and your action plan. You don't have to have it all. And I certainly did not have any of it really when I started. But this is a whole new dimension of how we think. This is not what the average physician out there is doing. This is, you're being accelerated like 10, 20 years into the future by being in this group and by being with these people. And so that's why I'm never graduating, because whatever Dr. Una is predicting what's happening 20 years, and hey, we're right there preparing for it. And so that's a gift. And not only Dr. Una, but just the community of doctors and the support and the thought that anything is possible. I don't know. I really don't have any other words to say to describe that. But the thought that anything is possible. And people always tell you that when you graduate, oh, you can do anything. But really, even after you've done all this and you have practiced in one model and one way, it is completely, entirely possible to change that and still have the life that you want. And that's what ABS has helped me accomplish.
Wow. Okay. Well, I hope you heard it. The way she said it, there's no way I could say it that way, but I really want to take this moment to thank you, because the thing is, part of the reason why the physician community is the way it is because we don't have the model all over the place of what the alternative is. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And if you look in many communities, you hear the stories, even for people who are building what we would consider successful businesses, multiple 7 figures, but their profit margins are so thin. They are needing to sacrifice their lives to do that. And all of these other things happening. But then there's this group of people who are choosing to dare their fears and take massive, messy action and do all of those things to really become examples of what is possible, right? To hear, I don't know if you realize how weird this statement is, right? I just celebrated a year in practice. I blew my mind having accomplished the revenue goals that I thought I couldn't accomplish. My life, every aspect of my life is so much better. I am living my dream. Like all of that doesn't go together in the physician. You know what I mean? In the physician community, that doesn't go together. And so I really want to thank you, because one is such an inspiration. Watching your journey is so inspirational. 2 is that you bring so much value back to the school, because people can see the way it is. People go, they watch the old calls and they're like, is this the same person? Yeah. And all of those kind of things. And so there's so many people who are inspired, those who are ahead of you, those who are you're ahead of, and all of those things. And then for the physician community as a whole, like you're telling people, of course, direct specialty care works. Of course, direct specialty care works in the Bay Area. Of course, you can have young children and get it done. Of course, you don't have to give up your life to do that. That's what your life and your business, that's the message is sending just by you being. Like you don't even have to put it out there. Just by you being, that's the message you're sending. And the ripple effect of it on this side of eternity, you're really never going to know what that is, because there's so many other people who are going to make decisions based on your story. Mm-hmm. So many people are listening to this podcast episode right now, and just based on your story, they're going to make decisions. And 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you'll be looking at somebody like, you're so amazing. And they're like, you're amazing. I heard you talk about your story. And that's where everything started for me. So really, I want to say thank you, because daring our fears, I mean, for our own lives is so valuable, but what it does to our community is just off the chain amazing. So thank you.
Yeah. No, this is great. And I think I would just like to say one last thing, which is, especially as physicians, this is hard to do, but just try to just let go of that need to have it all figured out. And I think that's what started the whole thing for me. I like in this year, in the next month, I don't know what's going to happen. I get up every day excited that crazy things can happen in my business and in my life. And so we just don't know, and that's okay. And just embracing that and going with it while trying to fulfill your dreams will just take you to places that you never ever thought was possible. And so that's what I would urge everyone to do.
Okay. And she was like, 17 master classes are not enough. I'm going to throw in an 18th. But thank you. This has been so good. Okay. So for everyone listening, one of the best gifts you can give yourself is really taking the time to make some decisions based on the things you've heard. We don't want you to just say, oh, that was inspiring and walk away, but make some decisions. What is that decision for you? For many of us who maybe I just need to let go of needing to have everything figured out. For some of you, it's maybe I've been thinking about the EntreMD Business School for the last 2 years. Maybe now's the time and I just want to be classmates with Dr. Cheruba. Whatever that is, there's actions, there's a team member you've needed to bring on. You've run away from networking, whatever that is, make a decision. Okay. That's where the magic happens. And I want you to also share this episode with the doctors in your life, because as we said, we need examples of what is possible. Once you start seeing these things, you can't unsee them, right? And you're just like, things have to change. And make sure you go follow Dr. Cheruba, because she spilled all the beans here. She could have charged for this. All right. So I will see you guys. Dr. Cheruba, thank you again. And for everyone listening, I will see you on the next episode of the EntreMD podcast. And together we are changing the physician community. This is a brand new day for physicians, and I'm super excited.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. If you enjoy listening to the EntreMD podcast, you have to check out the EntreMD Business School. It's the #1 business school for physicians who want to build 6, 7, and multiple 7-figure businesses. You get the coaching, the accountability, and the community you need to do the work so you can thrive. To find out if this is your best next step, book a call with my team, entremd.com/call. That's entremd.com/call. I can't wait to celebrate all the wins we can create together.